what all the presidents and chiefs would agree upon. The short words, protracted, bring up their awareness of the nervous system, like the sense and sensibilities of fact treatment nature, of defenses of that, of needs of defenses of that. Because that's the only way they could conceive things. For how people's value/value progression automatically is temporary positive. Automatically, that can't help to seek its course of temporary/lasting positive that is also positive unto itself, which is all things at once. Boxing is campus dance, with stolen name. So, we have to have a place to fight that is not involved. Investigations, investigators, vetting identities. Identities of the law themselves, individually grouped together, the branches and the types of former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, his co-defendants, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with predicate acts on campuses I went to, with houses next to them, with things they tied where they plant things with locations, and online. It's overtly recorded, / insidiously. And where that is self-valued, they're playing identity the same way computers work. Since before computers, everyone was in sick database laws that were self-valuing criminally foreign influence premises treatments, sequence treatments, finite, active, progressive treatments. And that's that progression, distinct from and non-distinct from, and simultaneously within those other volumes as value, distinctly as positive and negative, distinctly. Distinct identities of positive, where truth is about positive. See, we have the perfect world, not just valued forsaken, not just having been valued forsaken, not just having been exploited that way. That only discerned by all. The whole time, what was being and is being engineered, hundreds of nations at once in a semi-ancient trap. The real causes of all locations, areas, and states, criminally foreign influence, the branches, the campuses, the database relationships further, the sciences further. All victims of a special kind, private databases further, overt criminal enterprises mixed, all kept needing to hide the same sequence shifts, finite, active, progressive, and uses of it, timed to identity ground locations, like Town Line Drive, all along there. The perfect chibi nature, where they have in Rocky Hill, they have the shopping centers and places near. Used to be a Harbor Park, America's Cup. God bless you guys, but the FBI associated with that. These are people intercity. And I'm not using names because they also prevent people from free speech outside of courts. Because they're using titles. See, then people have to react by just trying to search out people because they attach us. Excuse me. Investigations, vetting identities. Again, all that juxtaposed, including the stewards of the Witness Protection Program, recorded and involved with predicate acts on my street. Now, with other nations involved with this. So they here and there are not integrity. But their uses of their their uses of the status quo, well, not the status, worse, I don't want to use status quo. Their uses of precedents, of statutes, of treatments of positive and negative, of people's names, of their own, of the identity ground locations, sequence relationships. So when I was in grammar school, they have, through time, I recorded roles, confessed and demonstrated. Strangers sought me out, who are ones with overt criminal enterprises, plural, per them and per what is actually recorded. Over interbranch families, they want to be called predators so they can pretend other and have a motive. Natural. And this breaching method knew that. So we have to understand how they're victims, but not letting us do that because of their roles with locations. Method/S. Where everyone's involved. In other words, there are even killers that are not involved with. Everyone's involved. Look at we're in pathology of homes, so to speak, where the modern streets connect to them in Old Weathersfield. And everything just, there's the pathology of everything that had slavery in the North and the South by a breaching method. And it is worse than obfuscated. And that worse than self-valued by our experts because in relationship to this method/S that was aware that they were going to be the /S part. And in relationship to what and as nature will continue to do, hundreds of nations at once. So if one nation tries to gather the short words and their protraction, because where there are the most impositions upon us, it is easier to see where and how the predicate acts delivery system method was yet to be demonstrated by ourselves outside of courts, because the courts were still criminally foreign influence because James Madison and our founding parents, thank God for Native Americans, because they wouldn't have had a chance. The damage control they did to the loss of the preservation, that which was never preserved, but was. That which actually revealed the sophistication of English didn't evolve. It was tactically, the history were rewritten because nations were tricked, hurt, persuaded, forced, worse, taken as ours by an archetypal criminal enterprise /S, including criminally legalized ones, that it knew no one would see coming how they made people self-value, how nation, not self-value the way people think too, the way it's discerned. Self-value how individuals grouped, including countries, nations, locations, areas, states, grouped, individuals, sexes, species, identity of volume, grouped, cells, cell body, cell nucleus, cell wall, grouped, bonded, an identity, a body of value. An identity of value is coming through, while as, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously, itself. Your hand is a different identity than your mouth, than your shirt. I mean, your shirt is not you. And distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. It is and is not. One volume is everything at once. See, but we are not that volume because we are also the value by being different of where and how, what is its volume as difference. And its identity of relationship to itself is an only increasingly perfect system. And the value of that as three identities of volume as value as nature / nature as value. That only when discerned simultaneously and with two identities of sequence/simultaneous nature. Further, as science per science method, can we then discern another identity, only one way, of invisible but still discernible, and where and how the before criminal foreign influences, especially criminally legalized criminal foreign influences. So what were Jim Crow laws about? Rolls with a breaching method that broke everyone to rolls with it and sustained that since before our founding parents were born. And they sustained everyone blaming what it was doing on other things other than themselves. And it propagated that. And it made a method of everyone's own country self-cultivating roles with that, blaming the breaching methods caused too. And with everyone blaming other things other than themselves, the real causes of nature itself, demonstrating to correlation nature, the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. Science, for example, a breaching this predicate acts delivery system method is why hundreds of nations at once, I'm not forgetting you, you are simultaneously come first, but America comes first from where I'm from. But I'm not leaving you out because this is what a computer is. This is mimicking what identity is as a species, science. This is where and how this did this all. Well, I have the right to test. It will, you know, if you see, you know, the people that pretend they have passions and emotions about other, when they use other people's, when they try to make peace. People are only defending means and needs to pretend they had practical positive and negative treatments, time treatments, excuses, which involve uses of all kinds of sacred things, like people, gold star families. That's not just politics using that sickly against what they would want, using the names of police, using the threat of, you know, not winning an election. Both sides are fake sides, in collusion with the evidence outside of courts that the courts would lie about while they're talking about, pretending to be all about free speech and everything. So to get away with that, they have to value where it's too expensive for them to admit lack of integrity because it ties to their roles with other identity of the ground locations, like strip malls, like all along routes, on and off interbranch locations, on and off campuses locations, database relationships, private simultaneously, inter-military, inter-service people. All this stuff shared with uses our identity ground locations, with this trap since before our founding parents were born. This was sophistication. So they want and need everyone at locations, areas, states, campuses levels to have fights, because they're preventing demonstration of the a whole bunch of countries and the same thing against their own, sickly distinctly. Because this is maintenance to where everyone has native fact treatment nature, and they're pretending they make allegations against people, where and how the courts in other countries are recorded online. The social media are being influenced also by the interbranch. They're lying about what they call the intelligence community. Is leaving out their roles with a vertical/horizontal database oriented part of the predicate acts delivery system method and of the archetypal criminal enterprise, which is order to it. Even if this is not real, this is not just a theory. This is to also counter the complete criminal foreign possession, criminally foreign influenced, tactically, specifically where and how identities are all contained, complete possession of the archetypal criminal enterprise, where and how syntax, so the people who are dealing with the computer hardware and the syntax with students, where they're making that, they're speaking to identities of names, when they're teaching how the computers work with identities and with identities of names, but from abridged parts of it for time reasons and all that, and because computer classes aren't about the law, because no longer the sciences are about that identity that the sciences share, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. It is an answer /S attached to all questions / statements / neutral. Awareness / unaware or unawareness and or. See, but what we need to do is counter this method /S that uses identity ground locations. It's not just the people here and there. It's not just the overt criminal enterprises that they have had them defined. Therefore, they're defending that. They left out the overt / insidious intercampuses of each age and nature, sickly distinctly, so much so tactically, effectively, to keep out sickly non-distinctly. Everyone relying on experts of law, experts of titles, experts, everyone, identity ground locations, in relationship to that which started before anyone was even speaking English or whatever language in whatever country. We are in a semi-ancient trap that keeps self-valued always too fast, too slow, keeps utilized criminally foreign influence, fact-keeping nature, method /S roles, where the method was missed by everyone. This was sophistication here first. This understood what the ancients had revealed through themselves before sciences became criminally foreign influenced. They realized the value of how to cause evolution's fruits and gifts, which uses, this is ground science. This doesn't leave out the grounds, distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous relationship to and as ourselves. Distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously as itself, that one identity of volume, where and how each identity of volume has a distinct identity of relationship to itself, and has a distinct increasing value of that, positive or negative. It is how this thing is positive or negative to itself. This system perfect. All exceptions in exception nature are in demonstration of the same thing. But exceptions in exception nature were propagated. Physical exceptions in exception nature were propagated to maintain syntax uses of word /value, that leave out the 5 distinct, non-distinct, and simultaneous identities of sequence slash semi-nature. Sequence slash simultaneous nature. Nature is identity. It's identity of relationship to itself, positive or negative. And is the value of that. Where and how we are a value slash value progression. It is a qualitative diffusion that is not only just positive or negative. Positive only. That's itself unto itself. We'll only say positive. Distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously here to earth. Which our value is leaving. Because we are self-valued roles with systems that are the complete possession of an archetypal criminal enterprise, a predicate acts delivery system method, a human fact treatment nature breaching method, /S, where everyone is the /S part, the plurals part. Everyone blamed and or are blaming even when correctly. In other words, the same way Uncle Tom is a phrase associated with Harriet Beecher Stowe in the Harriet Beecher Stowe house, which is right next to the Mark Twain house on Farmington Avenue in Hartford, Connecticut, which is not a far horse distance or jogging distance. Joggable distance from, not far from Wethersfield, where George Washington had to come to meet with the French general right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War and had to leave slavery entrenched. He had to leave roles with that breaching method that was entrenched. He was using James Madison's plan. That is also native pure, yet liberated. That's why I see president / chief. But see, more and more, there has to value the physical difference of the Native Americans that are physically the survivors of that predicate acts delivery system method. As survivors that were only allowed to remember, have recorded, already haven't been forced, simultaneously child abused and elderly abused, and each age abused methodically, as the same method /S that was doing this against the colonists, as the same method /S that was doing that against other surface nations that were involved with that. Look how little England is compared to the British Empire, because nations were born as modern nations in a semi-ancient trap that came since before modern nations' religions, messengers. See, we still have the physical delusions of psychology in collusion and psychiatry, and with the physical delusions of the branches of government also. Self-value too, because they are still using criminally foreign influence premises treatments. They are still using and having had used their treatments of positive or negative in people's names and reactions, normal, and what is in natural, where this method already had complete possession of where and how, where everyone speaks, this is what I hear, there's sense and sensibilities, there's layers, and people aren't going to be honest. Well, that's all right, then they just have courts figured out. Those courts were used remotely. Every time they make an opinion about, and every time they do, while they're not making opinions about what Jim Crow laws were about what slavery is about. When they bring up slavery, they leave out the predicate acts delivery system method. They self-value roles with means if we all victim opinion natures and conviction natures that are pretending other people have that. And they're not allowing real premises. For example, the United States media recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed their interbranch sources roles, a whole bunch of other nations, with the method of pretending people attack other people. If someone asks someone for help where mandated laws prevent it, because we have investigators, and vetting identities that are recorded through time, attaching people to fake locations with others, and forcing themselves into roles with that in sustained ways, because they need to hide life progressions, illusions from the past. They need to pretend I was in locations, but other people, they have conspiracy. They pretend people make conspiracy theories, and they fabricate audio and video to get away with it. And they already did this. A whole bunch of other nations did this against their own, and our country did this against our own. And that was part of what was used to, like, their roles with the identity ground locations uses. With way worse than just the sense and sensibilities uses. Because these are people that are, to hide that, they're using their kids. They're using their extended family members. They're doing the same thing with the fake people. They're attaching everyone, and everyone's having this done to them. To fake words with the people around them, which people just ignore. So avoid that person. So now they're controlling you. They're using identity ground locations in relationship to where and how they have been fabricating audio and video in cases dealing with each age of fact treatment nature, sickly distinctly, through all kinds of victim roles, within as the defenses of identities of nations individually grouped and together as only realized, that can't simultaneously defend that and counter what really maintains the overt criminal enterprises and the private ones, recorded overtly / simultaneously and insidiously, kept needing to hide the same finite sequence shifts, finite lies, active lies, progressive lies, and sequence shift, an identity of sequence / simultaneous nature further as identities, relationship to where and how the individual grouped in species, identity of volume / S, where are in generation of that complete identity that has us revealed, individual group species, actually, as the perfect world that's making more of its identity of forever nature, which is simultaneously the phenomenon of more and more of its identity of relationships to itself, being and having been an increasing identity of volume as value as nature / nature as value. And the value of that is simultaneously also increasing. One identity of forever nature is making more of itself per science as a scientific variable. Some people want to believe there's more than one. In other words, the ancients used, the science reveals there are needs, there are proofs that it is most practical, also for how it is denied. But see, that's why it is also evidence that and how there were fake sides, where and how the physical victims of those the worst predicate acts delivery system method ends of it with the laws that were database relationships sustained, were tied to everyone's fact treatment nature, So we have to show the people how to admit. They can't do that, and we can't do that. We can't have a. We have. We're speaking about the passions, the feelings of people that are told to act as the news media, and they're told to value the illusion of the difference, and that increase so they simultaneously value the illusion of unity between identity ground locations like news media, involved with interbranch, offensively fabricating audio and video with a whole bunch of other countries per their uses of identity ground locations, per the uses of other people's names, per the uses of the kids of the interbranch and the kids that are going to be it down the road. We are in a semi-ancient trap. So that's why I spoke. There's nothing personal against Trinity College and CCSU. This is because of the crime method /S that the other countries and that former director of the FBI and that judges and that prosecutors and their family members were involved with the houses forced, not even realizing, on my street, people tied to them, and in intercities tied to the same people involved with the narrative of an Officer Sullivan and officers forging and switching names, using the names of other officers, and with other police departments. There is a DeMauro family that confessed, recorded, demonstrated. They have roles with Wethersfield Police also, and as police forms with them, and as them also with people, a whole bunch of people tied to a mobile gas station. That'll not stop me out. These are people that, through time, are involved with mayors, involved with investigators that are planting things where problems between people, fake unity between people, fake indifference to it, fake neutrality, because of their roles recorded with criminally foreign influence uses of investigations themselves, because of criminally foreign influence uses of identity ground locations. So each part of a physical computer is an identity of the ground location that was programmed as a sequence /simultaneous nature, where its sequence nature works with what is the simultaneous nature, that is the identity of value /value progression. That is the computer, for how English works. That is the identity of the ground, distinctly and non-distinctly, and simultaneously, in conjunction to the engineering of how we are fact-cheaping nature, how we are this identity of value /value progression, and within as perception, and within as other people's names in our own. We're in a trap that is exploiting us, but through ourselves, having self-cultivated as victims. But rather than let anyone demonstrate this, we have to force the interbranch to give up their own. These are the same people involved with putting poor people in jail every day. Roles with that engineered. Which is poor, we have the obligations to demonstrate, is breaching method applied. It's a criminally foreign influenced word /value that is involved with measured, propagated, self-cultivated. It can't defend itself and pretend to be science. It has to pretend to be science anyway, because hundreds of nations are competing with markets positions. They have no bottom. They have a noose around wealth's heads. They have a noose around every individual, let alone and those most So when they're separating the group from the suburbs the identity ground locations were engineered by a breaching method that was for and as the slavery of our founding parents. It was for and as breaching screens propagated, self-cultivated, though, through other motivations, means, persuasions, to pretend other things other than selves are only possible, Their uses of opinions and convictions outside of courts and online can only be defended if they fabricate. If they end up, then when they get caught, they have to go, no one's holding on to what they already typed. So they just replace it with what they want us to have said. They put people in fake quotes, fake audio and video. And it also shows that and how they've been roles with predicate acts with people in classes that never even had communications before. They get involved with the narratives of people that are in other classes with interbranch families that are involved with a whole bunch of other countries. That's where they have the perfect world in the narrative, where and how they have, they won't let anyone have quality of fact treatment nature to demonstrate what would have been demonstrated. Things like this. Things like the real causes of negative value nature progressions, action natures. We have people stacking in New York City, in cities like that throughout the world. Here and there, all identities of the ground, jobs, titles, treatments of positive and negative defenses of that, invested, can't defend that in themselves from what keeps each location, area, and state in collusion with itself, where it needs to adapt to keep uses of each identity of the ground, location, area, state, on and off the state capital, on and off the elections locations. This is on and off military locations. All exceptions and exception nature are in demonstration of the same thing. There's a complete possession of every identity of the ground location. Self-value. Victim predators. So, down the street from the Mark Twain house in the Harry Beecher's Stowe house, note with the phrase, Uncle Tom. With the concept of Uncle Tom, two notes, simultaneously, distinctly, not distinctly, something. Down the street from there was or is still a Robert Cheverie's office, a lawyer's office. And there are people from Wethersfield, that's in downtown Hartford, which is right next to, which is just north of Wethersfield. And Wethersfield is where George Washington had to come to meet the French general for help to win the last battle of the Revolutionary War. Not revolution. And he had to leave slavery entrenched here in the North, sickly distinctly from how it was left in the South. And where and how that is simultaneously valued to be understood simultaneously, to be contemplated simultaneously. We have that worse than obfuscated. We have other in place of what is simultaneously there. True. With identity treatments of positive and negative too, no. Because we have people pretending passions and emotions in relationship to this method I caught them involved with locations next to all the campuses in my town. Like one's an elderly home now. There's a schedule family involved with identity theft fraud. People involved on and off Fox Connecticut News with two Mendez police that fabricate audio and video with news media, and with on and off the Wethersfield Police Department, and with investigators, identities of the law on and off New Britain Superior Court. Also involved with them with predicate acts on and off child campuses, and with the private security of the schools, and with doctors involved with drugs, crimes, and medicine crimes with the kids, and on and off Fox and with WFSB. Now these are people through time involved also with predicate acts on and off Wethersfield Library, Wethersfield Town offices. Used to be a police station there too, and with the locations near there. Like right next to it is the middle school. Also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated with foreign and domestic medical families, and people involved with military, involved with identity thefts and frauds, people with the Department of Transportation and the DMV. Now they're involved with people, with federal criminals since before they got caught, and ones that were co-defendants of former director of the FBI in a 2006 part of a case in a district court in Connecticut. Former director of the FBI, former standing chairperson on Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organization Act. His co-defendants like a John LeConte. His daughter wasn't a co-defendant, but John LeConte was one of the co-defendants. His daughter was in my grade in high school. I don't think she went to my grammar school. I don't think she went to my middle school. I don't know. I mean, I guess she went to, maybe I never saw her in middle school. And there are military families. There's like a Klovinskis family next to a Webb school. And they're associated with a Webb school, houses in it with a Webb school that are involved with on and off Central Connecticut State University in New Britain. And on and off Hartford locations and Wethersfield locations. And Berlin locations with people leading up to and in the World Trade Center involved also on and off World Trade Center connected locations and families and names and uses of mind. And uses of their own perception and other people's perception with investigators, vetting identities, and people that are defending uses of identities of the law, that as is. Because we could afford. Think about if there was if you were a leader and everyone was your kids. Leave it. That which was employed by a breaching method, a predicate auxiliary system method that was a sustain. So we have to have a place to be able to we have emotions and passions being faked by each identity of the ground location, including the branches of government, including the campuses, including the sciences further, including the database relationships further. This is connected to how all along routes, right where George Washington had to come, the locations around there, are victims recorded, used as victim predators, people involved with the intelligence community. Church Street in Old Wethersfield, people sought me out to record, confess, demonstrate, confirm, involved predicate acts with Wethersfield police, people tied to a Dillon family, that are involved now also with people tied to, games through kids, because they're involved also with people on the Child Defense Registry, even if that was made up, even though it was reported. Since before that, I caught them involved with predicate acts, with that, and with people on and off Two-Rod Highway where it runs into Hangdog Lane. Also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, involved, tied to a Dillon family, involved with identity theft, sequence shifts with them, roles with falsified police reports, and with overt criminal enterprises, and as people involved with predicate acts with databases of campuses, as people also through time all along Route 3, and where it goes on and off the state judicial branch offices, involved with identity thefts and frauds, also in the form of falsified police report roles, also as complete strangers, also in the form of their roles with ties to the same house involved with them, with predicate acts, with interbranch also, and foreign, with forensics locations, and with them in crimes with their patients and criminals since before they got caught, and with the investigators, and an intelligence community making lies about me, about the substance of what I say and what others say, because of their roles with having been fabricating audio and video into databases leading up to the World Trade Center attack in the Ninth Circuit Court right next to the World Trade Center, right before it, and since. It was proven post-dated documents have been shown to the Ninth Circuit, from post-dated from inside the court to appear late. Then the World Trade Center was hit. Those same people were involved with predicate acts and with identity thefts, frauds, falsified police reports, and uses of investigations and investigators and military on off West Hartford locations, on off East Hartford locations, on off Rocky Hill locations, Weathersfield locations. My town's police chief from 1 year ago, involved with the same house /S, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with the officers using the name Sullivan in the name McGee. Even though, and so each of them are involved with different police reports that are involved with juxtaposed natures of predicate acts against me and against other people in time. And now these are also people pretending passions and emotions with gun crime roles and verbal threats, also tied to them forging, switching names. These are also people tied to a Scalora family /S that are involved with identity thefts and fraud. That are also in the form of falsified police reports, where their roles with criminally foreign influenced uses of investigations, investigators, and vetting identities, and uses of that, and roles with that. In other words, we had used remotely all these people through time. And so it was worse than just spying. This was sophistication. This was a method /here. So where George Washington came is right around the corner from Church Street. That house in the corner of Church Street and Main Street is recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with people with the intelligence community, also private, retired and standing, associated with Connecticut news media, also on-off New Haven FBI, and other FBI locations involved with the former director of the FBI, personally criminally involved, now with obstructing, and worse than obstructing, mine and others' needs to have the Attorney General give us reliefs for what other Attorney Generals had hid from them and or hid themselves. Whatever. But we have names forging and switching. We have writing prevented offensively. We have, all exceptions and exception nature set up offensively with this. Identity thefts and frauds. So this Debbie Gold pretended I had a conversation with her, came up to me, screaming, going nuts, making no sense. I was never around her in class or anything like that. I noted this. So that was a former mayor's kid. They get the mayor's kids and sensibilities inclusion with other agencies, other branches of government, other people of each branch that were already, victim predators, and blaming other things, others themselves, having valued that. Further and further, having locked themselves into self-valued uses of criminally foreign influence premises treatments, sequence treatments, finite, active, progressive, truth treatments, positive treatments, and identity treatments. This is an identity theft, fraud, moral method that is exploiting humanity. It is exploiting each of the sciences' identity, ground locations, specifically because it kept and keeps that so many sickly distinct and that valued sickly distinctly other pretend because it's exploited off the campuses. It is exploited online, and that is exploited further. And these is exploited database relationships. Then they go back and make positive and negative treatments. Well, we have to stop people from making mean comments to others. And in other words, that's how their syntax describes their reaction. They're making a sequence. Well, this came first, and but then they don't do that equally, and they leave out the locations. The police departments are recorded, confessed, and demonstrated recorded threatening me that they will, and others, since I was a kid and since others were kids, that they fabricate audio and video. They attach people to fake locations, fake words. They attach fake communications with our parents, them fake words with us, fake sequence with fake relationships to other people, fake natures of people, ties to other people. There's a Joshua Julian involved with various natures of courts, and people involved with forensics locations that are also involved with child sexual offenders and medical offenders, involved with drugs, crimes with kids, and judges that are involved with those doctors, where they make up audio and video about strangers when they get caught involved with federal crimes with kids, forcing them to roles with their wrongdoing and with their sequence shifts and with their uses of other names tied to that, where and how they are used for way worse, leading up to the Trade Center and since. They are recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with a pattern of confessed and recorded predicate acts that the investigations had with as people that communicated with Hartford courts and the Britain's courts, leading up to the 2006 case in Connecticut, the district court case, /S, one's tied to it, and leading up to the World Trade Center one. They also had doctors that had faked conversations with me, that are also with their kids that were involved with predicate acts with databases, identity thefts, frauds, fake conversations with me when I was a kid, and with the news media to hide their life progressions. These are also people personally involved with predicate acts with prosecutors against little kids and against their family members and elderly every single day in court, using the everything that comes before them, using all those subjects in the identity ground locations to cover up how they were used since they were kids. This science never spoke for one location, let alone those most forsaken. It is also how they have racially charged narrative natures involved with sequence shifts, involved with identity thefts and frauds. Like the use of the name Bayrock and that street sign associated with that, and involved with elderly home, and uses of the 3 spots at the end of the Berlin Turnpike, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with identity thefts against me and others tied to me, where that are foreign and domestic in collusion. Also tied to the people with ties to the house on my street, involved with predicate acts at Trinity College and at CCSU, where they use the phenomena of interbranch family, military families, service people, using other people's names and pretending they know them because they're from the locations, where and how that's involved with the people, also with CCSU and Trinity College, or involved with educational positioning, interdepartmental positioning in relationship to where we have them foreign and domestic shared, overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and narratives and readings of the law, and means to quote the law and precedents and statutes, still in collusion with that which is preventing outside of courts. Demonstration of how they're still originally instilled. The lawyers also were in private was simultaneously involved with the complete possession of the branches of government that actually of integrity, actually of ethics, speaks and tells actually as science about what those crazy laws and rolls with those crazy laws were about. So down the street from the Harry Beecher Stowe House are locations also in the Mark Twain House. No, again, involved with this identity of the ground, value/value progression. Because there are people involved with the narratives of the former director of the FBI's lawyer in those locations that are also involved with identity thefts and frauds of people also in the form of falsified police reports and sequence shifts roles. Also, other people on and off Webb House, Webb School, all along that route with the houses on Church Street that Heather Hansen and her boyfriend sought me out, and their friends sought me out to report, confess, demonstrate, were involved. Also with foreign investigators and military. We housed some of my area investigators through time. Involved also with wire crimes and with people with roles with parks and programs with kids, private and other, like Cub Scouts. Now these are also roles with sexually natured abuse. These are people that are exploiting each age of fact treatment nature's values / value progression as positive and negative treatments, where and how that is sickly denied the proper answer /S, and where and how that would have been demonstrated by now. But we have lipoaggressions, and we have roles blaming other things, others themselves, the real cause /S for those lipoaggressions, even when they're not involved with them. Then defending that, we have that which can't defend itself and afford correlation nature to protract short words in regard to the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts and natures. Also evidenced by how we have experts blaming other things, others themselves, the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts and natures. For example, where we have people stacking. We have people pretending that it is sacred, the right to vote. In other words, just to pretend that they don't realize, and them not realizing, but it's recorded. Mandated law is prevented by everyone in collusion. So we have to speak for the law. But the law is wrought of a complete, criminally, already criminally foreign influence. Before our founding parents were born, wanted us to tell us about this. But they didn't have the free speech yet because this was already entrenched. It was already a protracted method, sustained. It wasn't just cruel. It's a method they have to understand because it was never challenged. And the challenge to it, all you have to do is realize it. And stay on this science that goes for what really causes evolution's fruits and gifts. What really are our means. One way redeems. It's native pure. But then the sciences became tactically, criminally foreign influenced. Identities to survive, they were forced to be into new identities of nations. Individually grouped in together. Tactical ulterior from what could defend itself and afford uses by the revelations capable of people that would use and could use that science that uses where and how and why we are this way, really, which is about the invisible but still discernible, which is about that identity of value / value progression as volume, as value as nature / nature as value. So I beg you, America. And Mike Tyson, you said if we want to ask you, I could fight. I don't have a license, but I can make weight if you tell me now for that in a month. For 135 or 130 or 139 easy, any one of those weights. I'm not even training. I shadow box. I could do shadow boxing. I had plenty of fights though. I had plenty of fights, dozens of fights. Open class through Connecticut USA Boxing, open class. But I had a problem going on that